Nearly 2 decades after 18-year-old Natalee Holloway's disappearance in Aruba, the prime suspect in the case is set to face charges in the U.S. as her family awaits justice.
Nearly 20 years after Alabama teen Natalee Holloway vanished in Aruba, her mother finally got the confirmation she long feared. Natalee was killed by Joran Sloot. After decades of silence and speculation, he has confessed. His chilling courtroom admission revealed a truth more disturbing than anyone imagined. The mystery that haunted headlines for years is now solved, but the answer is devastating. Stay with us as we uncover what really happened that night in 2005. Her case became one of the most publicized unsolved mysteries of the century, until a disturbing 2023 confession by longtime suspect Joran Sloot shattered the silence. In a recorded FBI interview, later filed in the U.S. Attorney's sentencing memorandum, Sloot described in chilling detail how he killed Natalee, saying he used a cinder block to smash her head. Though not tied to a murder charge, the confession came with his guilty plea for wire fraud and extortion against Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway. As part of the plea deal, he finally revealed what happened after a night out in Aruba, when he and Natalee ended up alone on a beach. He claimed Natalee resisted an unwanted sexual advance and hit him in the groin, prompting him to violently retaliate. He admitted to kicking her in the face, knocking her unconscious, or worse, as she stopped moving entirely. Seeing a cinder block nearby, he picked it up and slammed it onto her head, confessing, "I smashed her head in completely." When asked, he identified it as a standard gray block used in nearby buildings. Afterward, he dragged her body to the ocean, waded in knee-deep, and pushed it into the water, hoping the tide would carry her away. Then he claimed he walked home as if nothing had happened. His chilling confession matched long-suspected details, and to verify it wasn't another lie, the FBI gave him a polygraph. He passed. Prosecutors, including Assistant U.S. Attorney Lloyd Peoples, called it the closest we'll get to the truth. Investigators even returned to the Aruban coast to compare his story with the real site. Yet, one haunting question remains. Where is Natalee Holloway's body? How could one buried confession, after 18 years, expose something even darker? Stay with us as we uncover the lies, manipulation, and the long path to a chilling confession. When 18-year-old Natalee Holloway vanished on May 30, 2005, during a senior trip to Aruba, all eyes turned to one name, Joran Sloot. She was last seen leaving a nightclub with him but never returned to her hotel. His story quickly changed, from claiming he dropped her at the hotel to later saying he left her alone on the beach. Despite mounting media pressure, countless searches, and intense questioning, no body, no witness, and no confession emerged. Yet, Sloot remained in the public eye for years. He craved attention, giving interviews, leaking tips, and making bold claims only to backtrack later. In 2008, he was secretly recorded by Dutch journalist Peter R. de Vries, seemingly confessing Natalee died while with him and that he hid her body. But he later claimed it was a staged act to impress someone tied to the drug world. This pattern, offering answers, then twisting the truth, became his signature. In 2010, his manipulation hit a new low when he contacted Natalee's mother, Beth, promising to reveal the location of her remains for $250,000. After receiving a $25,000 advance, he led them to a bogus construction site. The cruel hoax led to federal extortion charges in the U.S. The real turning point came in October 2023, nearly 20 years after Natalee vanished. Extradited from Peru, where he was already imprisoned for another murder, Sloot struck a plea deal with U.S. prosecutors. This time, he fully confessed to the FBI. In a signed statement, he admitted he tried to sexually assault Natalee, and when she resisted, he kicked her, knocked her out, and killed her with a cinder block before dragging her body into the ocean. Unlike his past lies, this was backed by a polygraph and deemed credible. His emotionless, calculated account exposed not just a killer, but a manipulator. For nearly 20 years, he clung to the truth like a trophy, then suddenly confessed in chilling detail. Why now? The mystery deepened. On June 5, 2005, just days after Natalee Holloway vanished in Aruba, local police made their first major move by arresting two former security guards, Nick John and Abraham Jones, on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. Both had worked at the Allegro Hotel, which was under renovation. Though officials gave no clear reason for their arrest, rumors claimed that statements from Joran van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers pointed to them. The media added fuel, citing the men's reputation for loitering near hotels and a prior run-in with the law. But the evidence wasn't enough. After over a week in custody, the men were released on June 13 without charges or a clear link to the crime. Just days earlier, on June 9, Joran van der Sloot and his friends Deepak and Satish Kalpoe had been arrested. From the start, Deputy Police Chief Gerald Dom Pig considered them key suspects. Authorities pulled phone records, monitored emails, and began surveillance just 3 days after Natalee vanished. But Dom Pig later admitted that pressure from Natalee's family led to premature arrests before solid evidence was in place. 2 days later, on June 11, confusion escalated when a government spokesperson falsely claimed Natalee was dead and her body had been found. That statement was quickly retracted. That evening, Dom Pig vaguely revealed a suspect admitted something bad had happened after taking Natalee to the beach. But the next day, prosecutors gave no confirmation, only saying the case had entered a critical phase. More arrests followed. On June 17, local DJ Steve Gregory Crows was detained after being named by a suspect. Days later, on June 22, Joran's father, Paulus van der Sloot, was also questioned. Both were released by June 26. Meanwhile, stories from Joran and the Kalpoe brothers kept shifting, first claiming they left Natalee at the Marriott Beach, then changing their versions multiple times, creating even more confusion. Police dismissed later versions of the story, believing the beach account was closest to the truth. But with no body, no solid evidence, and ever-changing stories, the case stalled. Even high-tech tools failed. On July 4, Dutch F-16 jets scanned Aruba with infrared sensors but found nothing. Natalee Holloway had vanished without a trace. The mystery endured for years, haunting her loved ones and the world. Then, in 2023, Joran van der Sloot finally confessed, and his chilling account was more disturbing than anyone had imagined. He continued, this wasn't the first time van der Sloot had spoken about that night, but it was the first time authorities believed him. Unlike his previous confessions, this 2023 statement was part of a formal plea deal, and the details matched long-held suspicions. His account lined up with the earliest theories investigators had, theories that had been drowned out by years of deceit, staged interviews, and false leads. For nearly 2 decades, Natalee's parents lived in a cruel limbo. Their daughter was gone, but they had no answers. They chased every tip, every new version of the story that van der Sloot offered, no matter how unbelievable. He once even tried to sell Natalee's mother false information about her daughter's remains, demanding thousands of dollars for a location that led nowhere. His lies weren't just harmful, they were a weapon used to torment those desperate for the truth. Despite countless searches in landfills, ponds, beaches, and sand dunes, not a trace of Natalee's body was ever recovered. Divers scoured the ocean, cadaver dogs swept potential burial sites, and advanced technology, including infrared-equipped jets and satellite imaging, was deployed. The FBI analyzed duct tape and strands of blonde hair. All these efforts led to nothing. Now, with van der Sloot's confession, a clearer picture has finally emerged. But the cruelest truth may be that the ocean swallowed all evidence long ago. According to him, Natalee's body was left in the water just hours after her death. And after nearly 20 years of tides, storms, and shifting currents, experts agree the chances of recovery are slim. This isn't just a story of one terrible crime. It's a story of manipulation, of a young woman's life stolen in an instant, and of a family who fought for truth through decades of pain and deception. Even as the full truth surfaced, it came with a painful realization. Justice in this case may never look the way anyone hoped. What did the world say after Natalee's brutal death, and how did her parents survive the heartbreak? Stay with us to find out. A mother's fury. A nation's firestorm. When the terrible incident happened on the Caribbean island of Aruba, the eyes of the world quickly turned to the island's police force and to her heartbroken mother, Beth Twitty. What followed wasn't just a criminal investigation. It became a deeply emotional and often bitter struggle between grief-stricken parents, Aruban officials, and the global media. From the very start, the Twitty family expressed sharp criticism toward Aruban authorities, accusing them of dragging their feet. They believed vital leads were missed, suspects were mishandled, and transparency was lacking. But Beth Twitty's own actions on the island also stirred controversy. Some accused her of pushing a one-sided narrative. Critics claimed she discouraged Natalee's classmates from fully cooperating with investigators, allegedly to avoid any detail that might paint her daughter in an unflattering light. He continued. The Twittys denied such claims, insisting their focus was only on getting the truth. Beth didn't hold back when speaking about suspects. She publicly named Joran Vanderloot and the Kalpoe brothers as the people she believed were involved in her daughter's disappearance. On July 5, 2005, after the Kalpoe brothers were briefly released from jail, she labeled them criminals and declared that they had participated in a violent crime against Natalee. That same day, hundreds of Arubans gathered outside the courthouse in Oranjestad, waving signs that read, "Innocent until proven guilty," and "Respect our Dutch laws or go home." The backlash was swift. Satish Kalpoe's lawyer threatened legal action, calling Beth's statements outrageous and libelous. Beth later apologized to the people of Aruba, explaining that her words came from deep pain and frustration. But Beth Twitty didn't back down. In 2007, she published her book Loving Natalee, a raw and emotional account of her journey. That year, she also appeared on Nancy Grace Again, voicing her belief that Joran and the Kalpoes were responsible. In her view, giving up meant Natalee's case would be forgotten. When a Dutch TV special aired hidden camera footage showing Vanderloot allegedly admitting involvement, Beth called the video damning and said it confirmed her fears. She even suggested that her daughter might have still been alive when Joran discarded her body into the sea. She accused Joran's father, Paulus Vanderloot, of helping cover up the crime. Angered by what they saw as systemic failures, the Holloway family eventually shifted their stance on tourism. By September 2005, Beth publicly called for a boycott of Aruba and Dutch territories. Alabama Governor Bob Riley stood beside her at a press conference on November 8, urging Americans to avoid Aruba. Though some U.S. governors and lawmakers echoed the call, others declined. Aruban officials, led by Prime Minister Nelson Oduber, hit back, calling the boycott irresponsible and preposterous. In defense, Aruba's tourism sector launched a full-scale campaign to rebuild its image, forming the Aruba Strategic Communications Task Force to speak on national TV and challenge negative portrayals. But beneath it all, politics, protests, and press, the ache of a mother searching for her daughter never faded. Whispers, backlash, and headlines. Was Natalee's mother unfairly portrayed by the media? Stay with us as the truth unfolds. How the disappearance of Natalee Holloway captivated the world within days. What began as a deeply personal tragedy for one Alabama family erupted into one of the most sensational missing persons cases of the 21st century. He continued, thanks largely to the relentless grip of the media, almost overnight, Natalee's face was everywhere. Her smile filled television screens, newspapers, and magazine covers across the United States. Networks like CNN, Fox News, Microsoft, and the National Broadcasting Corporation ran nearly non-stop coverage from morning shows to late-night broadcasts. Anchors recounted her story with growing urgency. Cable news channels transformed the search for Natalee into a daily feature, complete with expert panels, breaking news updates, and live shots from Aruba's beaches. Her disappearance had all the elements the media craved: a young, blonde, attractive high school graduate on a celebratory trip to an exotic Caribbean island gone without a trace. The public couldn't look away, and the media wouldn't let them. Beth Holloway, Natalee's mother, became the emotional anchor of the story. With determination in her voice and pain in her eyes, she became a constant figure on television screens. She flew to Aruba immediately after her daughter was reported missing and quickly took control of the narrative, speaking directly to the press, pleading for help, and demanding answers from local authorities. Her appearances on shows like The Today Show, Larry King Live, and Nancy Grace gave the search for Natalee a deeply personal edge. Viewers across America were drawn into the heartbreak and the hope that Beth represented. But as the coverage intensified, so did the complications. While the media frenzy kept pressure on Aruban investigators and ensured the case wasn't forgotten, it also triggered a wave of criticism. Journalists and media watchdogs began pointing out that Natalee's case was receiving far more attention than most missing persons, especially those involving people of color or victims from less privileged backgrounds. The phrase, missing white woman syndrome, gained widespread use during this period, drawing attention to how race, class, and appearance influenced which victims the media chose to spotlight. Back in Aruba, the growing media circus caused tension. At first, many on the island were sympathetic and hopeful the attention would bring answers. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, frustration set in. News reports often painted Aruban police as slow, disorganized, or even corrupt, an image many locals and officials felt was both unfair and harmful. Tourism dropped, and resentment grew. What began as a humanitarian spotlight started to feel like a relentless invasion. Joran the last person seen with Natalee, was thrust into the public eye, portrayed by many outlets as the prime suspect and media villain with each interview. He continued, he gave each new twist, confession or denial, he reignited interest in the case. Even though much of what he said lacked verification, every word he uttered made headlines. He became a central figure not only in the investigation but also in the spectacle surrounding it. The drama of the case began to blur the lines between fact and fiction, truth and ratings. As time passed, the focus shifted. The media started scrutinizing the investigation itself more than the disappearance. Even the smallest developments were reported as massive updates. A new witness, a retracted statement, a supposed tip-off, anything was enough to bring cameras back to the island. And each time Vanderloot re-entered the news, whether for further legal trouble or another twisted tale, the media pounced. In 2010, when Vanderloot was arrested in Peru for the murder of Stephanie Flores, the spotlight returned with full force. Then again in 2023, when he was extradited to the United States and finally confessed to killing Natalee, it all came rushing back. The case was reignited once more, dominating headlines. The press rolled out specials, retrospectives, and investigative documentaries. True crime programs, podcasts, and streaming platforms dedicated hours to dissecting every angle. Programs like Dateline, NBC, 2020, and Netflix documentaries revisited the story repeatedly with fresh interviews and archived footage. They tried to reconstruct what happened in Aruba on that final night. But by then, the Holloway case had become more than a crime, it was a media landmark. It changed how missing persons stories were covered. It raised difficult questions about bias, ethics, and the responsibilities of the press. The coverage had helped keep Natalee's name alive. It pushed authorities to continue the investigation and amplified her mother's cries for justice. But it also exposed the flaws of sensational journalism, the rush to judgment, the lack of accountability, and the tendency to exploit pain for ratings. What was once a desperate search for a missing girl had, over time, become a story the media simply couldn't quit. And even years later, the silence never truly came. Every time Joran Vanderloot made headlines, whether for a new confession, another arrest, or fresh legal action, the story of Natalee Holloway was pulled back into the spotlight. Her name still stirs emotion, still sparks debate, and still commands attention across the globe. What happened in 2005 has refused to fade, echoing through news cycles and public memory to this day. So what kind of judgment do you think Joran Vanderloot deserved? We would like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.